I know you probably got to go. Miguel, but have you ever heard of the term "nigga wake up call"?
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism.
Oh,
Have you ever
brother.
had any of
Oh,
those?
brother.
I'm just asking.
Fast Zone News here, back with more breaking news, and today we're going to be watching Larry Elder absolutely destroy Charlamagne the God. The Breakfast Club had Larry on their show this week, and they ended up having a heated debate for virtually the entire interview. They discussed the topic of systematic racism for a large portion of the video, and the hatred for white people was very apparent from one of the unhinged hosts. We unfortunately see this all too often from members of the radical left, and it was nice to see Larry stand his ground on the issues. He didn't sugarcoat any of his answers in this interview, so if you're a sensitive liberal, consider yourself warned.
Let me ask you a question. What do white people do wrong, Larry Elder?
What do you mean, what do white people do? I'm not worried about white people. I'm worried about what's going on with us.
But
Right
if
off the rip.
there's systemic racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is. I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe there's
No,
systemic
there used to
racism?
be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is in America.
Oh, man, there's so many.
Just give me the most important.
Oh my God, there's just so many. I can't even think of one. There's just, oh my gosh.
Important one, you think?
But at the top of mind, I'd probably maybe say mass incarceration. Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression,
he's gonna
when
cry.
50% of black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's the breakdown of the family. There's a direct.
I'm not going to. I agree with the family part. I'm a black man who is a father to his children, and I'm
Right.
a happily married
Right.
black man to a black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part, But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and black people do that. And when I ask you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale, where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was black. And I think most of those who were doing this were black. And in recent years and times, there have been a number of these in places like Chicago, places like New York. If I were involved in something like that, Charlamagne, I grew up with a dad, just as you're raising your own children. I would have been more afraid of my father than I would about the cops catching me. These kids are afraid of neither. They don't have a father in the home. Cops are demoralized. They're pulling back. Their manpower is short. And as a result, you tell a bad guy you're less likely to be caught, convicted, incarcerated, crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. When you
Right.
say, what do white people do?
Common sense. If you don't prosecute crime, guess what happens? People commit crimes. Oh my God.
I mean, this is a country that has struggled mightily to get over its historic racism. There was a civil war. There was a big civil rights movement. This is the only majority white country that's ever elected a black president, let alone reelected a black president. The three biggest cities in America are New York, Chicago, L.A. They all have black mayors, even though no city has a majority of black population. The president of Harvard is a black female. Martin Luther King in 1966, Charlamagne, gave an interview to the BBC. This is 2 years after the Civil Rights Act of 64 got passed. And he said, I'm amazed at how many positive changes there have been in America in the last 2 years. Why, if things keep going like this, we could have a black president in about 40 years' time. Do the math. Right on cue, Barack Obama elected 2008. He didn't say there'll be a black female president of Harvard, and there has been. He didn't say there are going to be black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and there have been several. He didn't say the percentage of the House would equal the percentage of black people in the population, and it does. He didn't say the three largest cities would have black mayors, and they do. He didn't say the largest and most prestigious.
He just keeps going. I'm sorry to keep stopping it, but this guy's just like fact. And look at Charlamagne's face. He's so confused. He's like, do you think he's actually listening, though, or do you think he's just like thinking of his response? But I think there's a woman coming up that just loses her mind, and she's like, no, white people are horrible.
Organization
Just wait.
of
I think
doctors,
it's
the
coming up.
American Medical Association would have 2 black presidents, and there have been. He didn't say the most prestigious organization of lawyers, the American Bar Association, would have 2 black presidents, and they have. He said president, meaning at that point, I can feel that I've reached the mountaintop, which is the speech he gave right before he got assassinated the day before. And now we act as if Barack Obama never even got elected.
Right.
And we're still talking about systemic racism. It's
get
not fair. It's wrong. And you're discouraging black people from working hard. 1990s.
Okay. Mr. Elder, a quick question.
This is the one that is just a total racist. You can just listen to her talk right here, and tell me she doesn't hate every single white person. And then tell me how it isn't racist, all the shit that she says. Just listen.
Let's just remove the word racism, since that seems to be a word that triggers, a conversation down the water hole. Let's just focus on the word system.
Okay.
You mentioned that the system
Okay.
was the one that discouraged. And again, we have no problem with agreeing that the family, the black family, should certainly has some room for some improvement. But let's just focus on system.
Room for
You said
improvement?
the system. Well, we're not going to go down that water. We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question.
What's with the left and just thinking they can just discredit and just turn off whatever somebody says to them? They're like, nope, we're not going to talk about that. You just listen to my facts. This is how it is. And whatever the real facts are, I don't care. Mine are the facts. This woman is totally uneducated.
So the question is, you said that the system encouraged black women to be single mothers, correct?
I said the welfare state, yes.
The welfare, the system. So who's in
Okay.
charge of the system? Who was in charge of the system?
Well, it was Democrats that passed it.
And who were
The-
Democrats? Were they black or white at that time?
Well, at the time, majority of black people were Democrats, as the majority of black people are Democrats now.
Not the voters. I'm talking about the system. Remember, the main idea is the word system. Who was in charge of the system at the time? The Democrats at the time, the system. I'm just going to Charlamagne's point about white or black. Was it white Democrats in charge of the system or black Democrats in charge of the system?
Well, if you're prepared to say that Lyndon Johnson did this viciously with an intent to destroy the black family, I disagree. He did it with the best of intentions. And if you look at the New York Times, which is left wing, the Washington Post, which is left wing, they cheered all of this.
Right. And what I'm asking, was it white people? So I'm going to ask again in case my mic's not coming through clearly. Was it white people in charge of the system or black people in charge of that system that helped break down the black family? It's a simple yes, just a simple question. White or
It wasn't that they were in charge of breaking down the black family. What are you talking about? Just because white people make a system doesn't mean that a certain type of person has to get on the system. The system was put there to help the people in the community. And chances are, no, I guarantee this woman, if there was no program for the same people, she'd be complaining the same exact way. So basically, if you give a program to underprivileged communities, you're racist. If you don't give it to them, then I'm sure you would be racist also. This is just a woman that hates white people. Look at how crazy she looks. It's like, this is racist right here.
black?
Well, you didn't have to go on welfare unless you voluntarily chose to go on welfare.
Correct.
The inducement was put there by Democrats, by
White
the
Democrats,
left.
correct?
Oh
Okay.
my God.
White
Well,
Democrats, correct?
most black people were Democrats, and they voted for these white people
Not
too.
voters. I said who's in charge of the
Who's in charge?
system?
Well, who puts
was in charge?
who puts them in charge?
Was Lyndon Johnson
Who puts
white
them-
or black?
Who puts them in
Maybe
charge?
that'll help you.
Fine, Lyndon Johnson was white.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
But
Proves
if your
absolutely
argument
nothing.
is that the reason he did it is because of racism, then I
No.
disagree. He did it because of
That's not my argument. I just asked you a simple question. Was he white or black? Charlamagne?
And Mr. Elder, you said you talked about the smash and grabs, right? And I find that interesting because when you see
That is
the mass shootings
ridiculous.
that happen, majority of those people are white males. What do you think about that?
Actually, if you look at the percentage of whites in America, which is 60%, the percentage of mass shooters is under that.
Oh, now we go to white men are the biggest threat to the United States because they're domestic terrorists. That's his next point. This is just like a hatred for white people interview. It's terrible. Can you imagine if 3 white people sat around and just said everything wrong with the black community? It would be the end of the world.
The percentage of people that commit hate crime is under that. The percentage of people who are serial killers is under that. Black people are 13% of the population. We commit a greater percentage compared to that
But no,
of
you
mass
specifically
shootings.
talked about the smash and grabs, though. So I was saying, since you're using that as an example, I'm saying, well, what about the mass shooters that are usually white males?
One more time. They are usually white males because 60% of the country is white. However, they underrepresent in terms of the number of mass shootings. About 50% or so of the mass shootings in this country are committed by white people, even though white people are 60% of the population. They underrepresent. We overrepresent when it comes to hate crime, when it comes to mass shootings, when it comes to serial.
That means that 13% of, I'm not sure if it's the black or minority community, commits 50% of the gun violence crimes. And this guy wants to seriously sit here and say that white people are the problem and that they're committing all the acts of violence. It's like, just because the news labels a certain thing a mass shooting doesn't mean that the shootings that are going on in the hood and in the impoverished areas, those are also mass shootings. People are dying. Just because the news doesn't cover it and doesn't label it because it's 2 black people and it doesn't fit their narrative, it doesn't mean it's not a mass shooting. It's still a mass shooting, and it's a great deal coming from a small portion of the country. So to say it's all white people is absolutely insane.
Killings, when it comes to robberies, when it comes to virtually every category of violent crime, we overrepresent.
So what do white people do wrong?
God,
we keep asking
dude.
you that. 'cause
Well,
it
seems to me, rather than deal with what's going on, the pathology that's going on in the inner city, you want me to talk about how bad white people are, which I don't think is a particularly productive thing to do.
I think there's a cause and effect, but if we can't talk about the cause, which I believe is systemic racism and white supremacy, the FBI says.
Well, I just told you, if it's systemic racism, please explain to me how it was when.
This shit doesn't even make sense. His arguments are now blending together. Systematic racism is causing white people to commit mass shootings. The shit he's saying doesn't even make sense. He doesn't even know what his argument is. He's just arguing to argue from his hatred for white people. And I didn't even know Charlamagne hated white people like this. This is crazy to watch, actually.
America really had systemic racism. In 1940, 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Again, this is during Jim Crow era. My father is from Athens, Georgia, grew up in Jim Crow. My mom is from Huntsville, Alabama, grew up in Jim Crow. 87% of blacks live below the poverty line. This is before Brown versus Board of Education. You did not find these kind of black-on-black crime.
Probably because we had no
choice. But they still were living
below
the poverty line, though, sir.
I'm sorry?
You're forgetting the fact that they were still living below the poverty line. You're picking and choosing, saying this was good, but this was bad.
Okay.
The bottom line, they end between the poverty line. But let's move forward
well,
on system.
can I just address that? In 1940, 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. 1960, that number had fallen to 47%. That's a 40-point drop in 20 years. That's the greatest 20-year period of economic expansion for black people in the history of America. Again, well before Brown versus Board of Education, well before the KKK imploded, well before we had race-based preferences. Why? Because it was rare for a black kid to be raised in a family without a father in the home. A strong belief in Judeo-Christian values, a belief in patriotism, even as America wasn't applying these values to black people, obviously, and a belief in entrepreneurship. All those things are now under assault by organizations like Black Lives Matter. Charlamagne, Black Lives Matter had on their website an attack on the nuclear family. The founders are self-described Marxists, trained Marxists. Marx wanted to dethrone God, was an atheist, and Marx did not believe in capitalism, let alone entrepreneurship. All the things that made black people still survive in virulent racism are now under attack by organizations like Black Lives Matter.
All of those things have always been under attack by white supremacy. You can go back to things like whether it's the Tulsa race massacres. Like every time black people do create these systems that are our systems and we are the entrepreneurs, it seems like white supremacy finds a way to destroy it.
Every time?
Yeah, every time.
The Tulsa massacre, within about
I swear, there's zero accountability for anything. Yeah, Black Lives Matter is so great, Charlamagne. That's a great thing you guys have created with their $1 million mansions in California. And if you think about it, the BLM, in order for them to raise money, there has to be the narrative that there's racism, and black people have to be not doing as well. So that tells me that the BLM movement wants these people to not do well. It's just like the Democratic Party. They want voters that need the government, so they don't want you to do well. BLM needs people to donate to their stupid organization so that they can buy mansions, so they need people to not do well. They need people to be victims to be a part of this shit. And that's really what I'm starting to understand. There's a large portion of the United States and the world that are just victims, and it's crazy, and they're all Democrats. Poor me.
5 years, that whole area was rebuilt. It was not even called the Black Wall Street until after it was rebuilt. And it was rebuilt, by the way, by black people without one dime of government money.
Yeah, but who destroyed it to begin with?
It was racists who destroyed it. No question about it. We've had race riots, but so have Japanese.
So you do agree that there's racism? I'm just so confused.
I never even came close to saying. I never came close to saying there was no racism.
You just said you don't think it's systemic racism.
Not anymore. Obviously, there was. We had something called slavery. We had something called Jim Crow.
That destroyed black. Hold on, sir. That was system that destroyed. That was the system that destroyed Black Wall Street. It's the same system right now that's not even wanting to pay those same living descendants, because I know your position on reparations, but those same living descendants of Black Wall Street.
Okay.
And then you move, and then you go on to say that the system, the quote unquote system, is also trying to destroy President Trump. So I'm just so confused on, do you believe that?
Yeah, we know you're confused. You're very fucking confused.
That the system can destroy or not. You pick and choose, sir, and that's what's so confusing to me. You just said it wasn't racism. Now it is racism. When it was time.
Look at Larry just smiling in disbelief. He's like, this woman is insane.
I said it wasn't.
There was no racism.
I said it wasn't systemic racism.
This clip was absolutely insane and is a perfect example of everything that's wrong with this country. We unfortunately have a large group of people that refuse to take any accountability for their actions, even when presented with facts. One group that seems intent on blaming all their problems on white people, even though billions of dollars have been poured into minority communities for decades. By no means am I saying that all people think this way, but unfortunately a large portion of the country agrees with this unhinged host. It's truly sad to see, and in my opinion it's the direct effect of hardcore left ideologies. The left would rather certain communities stay struggling, so they'll continuously rely on the government. You see, Democrats are truly sick and they don't want their supporters to have a better life whatsoever. They'd much rather they stay impoverished and rely on the government for regular assistance. Democrats view these people as guaranteed votes, and that's why they continue to push these hardcore victim ideologies. White people are simply not the reason that certain communities struggle, and I wish more people were as strong-willed as Larry Elder. The victim mentality does nothing but hurt the people that believe it, and this interview was honestly pretty sad to watch. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think America's systematically racist, or do you think it's complete bullshit? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you guys. And as always, I want to thank all my viewers and all my new subscribers. And if you're not already subscribed, hit the button below to gain access to the latest news and content 7 days a week. And this has been another edition of Fast Zone News. Peace out.